Hello and welcome to another video from Sustenance Uncovered, the only channel you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today's little video is going to be another video about how to get free fruit and nut trees. This time we're going to talk about how to get free trees from seeds. Now I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that if you have the resources, you go out and get yourself a whole bunch of $100 fruit and nut trees. There's no telling how much time we have or do not have left before the collapse comes, and you'll be a whole lot better off with a bunch of big, mature, fruit-producing trees than you will be with a bunch of little trees about that big. However, you got to do what you got to do. And me, I plant seeds all the time. I plant shoots all the time. I plant cuttings all the time. I feel comfortable doing this, and the main reason is I've got a whole bunch of trees that are mature and producing fruit. So the ones I'm putting in the ground today are not the ones I'm going to be dependent on for food. The ones I have already established will provide all of my needs already. Now, if you're planting trees from cuttings and shoots, generally you're getting those locally, so you know they're going to grow locally. You ain't got to worry about trying to figure out whether or not that tree will grow where you're going to plant it. But seeds, that's a little different. If you get a piece of fruit from the store and you save the seeds out of it, that tree could have come from 1,000 miles away. It could have come from an ecosystem completely different from the one where you live, and it could be that that tree will never grow. So we're going to do a little research. First thing you're going to want to do is go to Google and type in U.S. Department of Agriculture Hardiness Zone Map. When you do that, it'll bring you to a picture of the United States of America with numbers all over it. Find your city, see what number it's in. That is your hardiness zone. Now the second thing you need to do is take the seed you're planning on planting and look it up. Find out if your orange tree or peach tree or banana tree or whatever you got will grow in your hardiness zone. If you've got that done, then you've got most of the battle won. The only problem you're going to have is with your chill hours. There's not really any way you can do any research on the chill hours for your seed. So you're just going to have to wing it. But chill hours is the number of hours that are required by the tree to be below 45 degrees before the tree will put out flowers. This is a protective measure to make sure that the flowers are not put out too early and killed off by a late frost. But like I said, there's not much you can do about it. If you're growing from seeds, not really much you can research. But it's not a big deal, because if you got a lot of property and you plant a lot of seeds, some of them will grow and some of them won't. And the ones that won't grow this year may grow next year thanks to global climate change. So the trees that are supposed to produce may not produce, and the trees that are not supposed to produce may produce. Now, if you're used to planting a garden, you're used to planting water-soluble seeds. What that means is you put a little kernel of corn or okra seed or a cucumber seed in the ground, and if the ground stays moist, the seed will sprout. That is not always true with seeds. In fact, there are several different types of plants that have non-water soluble seeds. These seeds must be digested by the animal that regularly feeds on them to make the seed sprout. Now, two ways to get around that is to simply swallow the seeds yourself and poop where you want your tree to grow. But another way is to sit, and this way is important because most people won't do what I just said. Take your seed in your hand. Get a file. Doesn't matter if it's a round file, square file, doesn't make any difference. All you want to do is cut through that non-water soluble seed casing so that water can get in. Now I'm going to demonstrate with a peach seed. Peach seed is water soluble. You don't have to do this with a peach seed. However, I have found from my own experience that the seeds that need this done to them are the ones that are dark and shiny. If it looks like it's got a coating of varnish on it, generally that seed's going to have to be filed. But you're going to take your file and go a couple of different places if it's a big seed and just cut through that casing. If you get through that casing, water will get through that casing, the seed will sprout. Another thing I've heard of people doing is taking fingernail or toenail clippers and cutting little holes. Now if it's a native species that grows in your area, something like persimmons are not water soluble, but wildlife eats persimmons, and if you simply find a pile of scat from a coyote or a deer or whatever, and it's got a seed in it, you can plant that seed. Now, another difference between seeds, planting seeds, and using cuttings or shoots is if you get a cutting or shoot off of a tree that has great big juicy fruit, you're going to get great big juicy fruit. You're basically making a clone of the tree you took the cutting or shoot from. With a seed, it's a little bit different. Seeds are a combination of the tree you got the fruit from, as well as the tree that produced the pollen that pollinated that fruit. In general, this is not a problem. If you go online and do some research, there's going to be a whole lot of people telling you if you grow a fruit or a nut from a seed, you're an idiot. And their whole line of reasoning is you don't know what you're going to get. Well, the reality is most fruits are grown in monocultures that extend over square miles, and the only pollen available is from other trees, just like the tree that produced the fruit you got your seed from. Some exceptions are the palm family. There are apple orchards. Most apple orchards make sure to plant maybe, I don't know, every 10th tree as a crab apple. The reason for this is you can have, say, a golden Dorset apple and an Anna apple that will pollinate each other, but a crab apple puts out so much pollen for such a long period of time that they want a crab apple every so often just to increase the amount of pollen in the air at any given time. The more pollen you have, the more production you have. So you get a lot more apples, but some of the apples will not be 100% apple. So there is a chance. With some fruits, you got a fruit this big, you plant the seed, you get a fruit that big. Now, the thing is, it's not going to happen very often. So that's the first reason it's all right to go ahead and plant that seed. The second reason is, even if it does, a crab apple is still food. So put your seeds in pots and get them going. Speaking of pots, this is a pecan seed. It's a pecan. Pecan itself is the seed. It is in the hickory family. I am not familiar with all the other hickories enough to tell you whether this is true for all of them, but I do know that if you put a pecan in a pot and the tree gets this big and that pot's on the ground, you will never get that tree out of the pot, because the tree will be the same length as the taproot. That taproot will go straight through that little hole in the bottom of your pot, plant itself in the ground, and if you try to pull it up, you're going to break the taproot. You can throw that tree away. You need to have a very long pot to start a pecan. That's just one of the things you got to be aware of. And it also may be that simply doing this search, propagate pecan, see the blank there, propagate pecan tree from seed. Now, anything that you plant, you should research any way you can. So try to type in the search engine, propagate that particular tree, or specifically propagate that tree from a cutting, propagate that tree from a shoot, propagate that tree from a seed, to find out everything you can before you do this. Some trees won't grow from a seed. You're going to have to do them from a cutting. Other trees are not going to grow from a cutting. No matter what you do, you're going to have to do them from a seed. Now, something else you need to be aware of. If you grow from a seed, you don't know if you're going to get a male tree or a female tree, or a tree that's both. Many fruit and nut trees are both. They're male and female. It doesn't matter. You're going to get fruit and nuts. But some species, not all, not even most, have either a male or a female tree. The male trees will not produce fruit. If you have a choice of growing something from a cutting or growing something from a seed, and it's one of those kind of trees, you need to do your best to try to get a cutting. Now, something that's often said, and it's wrong, is that if you get a grafted tree and you save a seed from the grafted tree, that seed will be half of what the tree is and half of what the graft is. The graft has absolutely nothing to do with the genetics of the tree. The tree is going to produce true to whatever it is and whatever the pollinator is, and it does not care what the graft is, the graft being the rootstock. And I'm not going to get into a whole lot about that, but to make growing trees commercially viable, a lot of times to speed up the process, people have to graft to rootstocks. And there's a lot of reasons for that are stated that are false, and there's a few reasons that are true. But the fact is, you're going to run into this on the tags. It'll tell you this is a grafted tree. Don't let that scare you. In fact, don't let it scare you if it's not a grafted tree, because a lot of times people say if it isn't grafted, it won't produce. Now, as an example, I have been shown pecans that were this big that came from a non-grafted tree. But I have been out in the woods and found plenty of pecan trees that just came up on their own that had huge pecans. And I have also seen grafted, cultivated pecans that were very tiny. In my experience, that is more to do with the weather than it is with the tree. If you have very, very low rainfall, the tree is still going to try to produce. It just won't produce as good a quality of fruit as it's supposed to. Now, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head to add to this little discussion about growing from seeds, but I will say this: if you're going to grow from seeds, you need to go out and do it right now. Time is a limiting factor, and also it's warm weather. This is the time to do this. In fact, all three of these videos I wasn't going to make until I had already successfully done a few trees to show you, but the amount of time it would take for me to get from this point to that point would be time taken away from your being able to do this. Please go out and try to start yourself some free trees. Doesn't matter what kind of way you use to do it, just do it. And if you don't want to survive, don't do it.